Nikolai Zinoviev is a character that I think leaves a lot of questions surrounding his inclusion in the remake of Resident Evil 3, not the least of which being, did he survive? And to state it bluntly, we don't know. Assuming we're going strictly on the continuity of the remake's version of events, he was alive when we last saw him. This means, based on the general rule of people being alive until you see them die, he likely made it out of Raccoon City before it was destroyed. Really, it's up to Capcom if they want him to have survived, and they likely left it up in the air because they weren't sure. I should also say that this is assuming that the story evolves a bit differently than it did in the original timeline, because for the most part, even though the original Resident Evil 3 had several different possibilities, it seemed like Nikolai died in most of them. All that being said, for me, I'm operating on the assumption that Nikolai is still alive in the updated timeline, and this video is dedicated to what potential I think there is left for him if he were to return. So to start with a baseline of Nikolai's story in the Resident Evil 3 remake, he was essentially a mercenary working for Umbrella that had been approached by another third party to gather battle data on some of Umbrella's BOWs. No one, other than Nikolai and the third party he was working with, knew about his ulterior motives, and we never get any kind of confirmation on who this third party could have been. This, of course, leaves the obvious question as to who Nikolai was working with. We're never given an answer, which could lead one to speculate on any of the other interests we've come to learn of since RE3. Could it be the Los Illuminados, which we'll see in RE4? Or could it be Wesker, which we'll see in RE5? Really, it could be anyone from the Connections to Tricell who have a vested interest in this information. Personally, my money is on Wesker though, since it's kind of in line with what he had Ada doing during RE4's story. This unresolved question is one of the things that could bring Nikolai back into the fold of the story, assuming they expand on it. With Umbrella's inevitable collapse between the events of RE3 and RE4, Nikolai may go on to work with this undisclosed third party, and it would be great to see a big reveal in that fashion. In line with my thoughts, Nikolai could play some kind of new role under Wesker in an RE5 remake, maybe tying him and Jill together in that story in a way that would allow him to get some kind of revenge for her leaving him to die.
Who are you working for?
I'll tell you, if you get me out of here. I'll pay you whatever you want. You're a fool!
However, that may be wishful thinking, and it's probably more likely that we'll just get some kind of confirmation of a connection in a future updated document. Personally, I don't really think we'll ever see Nikolai again without a relatively big change to the timeline, but the fact that his death was left up in the air does suggest that Capcom may have something in mind to do with him. As for what that is, it's anyone's guess. So should Nikolai Zinoviev return to the series? I'd like to see it, but unless it's in a spin-off, I see little reason that he would. With the events of RE3 taking place in 1998, he'd probably be quite old and too random to return to the current timeline of events, and if he returned to the timeline of the remakes, then he would represent a large change-up to the continuity that Capcom probably doesn't want to tackle. Still though, he's an interesting character, a mercenary that's on par with the infamous Hunk, and there is definitely more that could be done with him if the developers saw fit to do so.